Hi there, I'm Caspar Craven, and I'm the author of Where the Magic Happens. I'm an entrepreneur, an adventurer, and a keynote speaker. And today on Dov Baron's show, we are going to be talking about kindness, how to take care of the people around you so that you can not only sail around the world with 3 young children, but to build a business built on compassion and purpose. So I hope you really enjoy it. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. I'm your host and founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to help you tap into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, profit in your business, your life, your leadership impact. My name is Dov Baron, and I want to welcome you to Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, where today we're going to be taking an insider look at building and bonding teams in extreme circumstances. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. You can now find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Tuner.fm, Stitcher, and wherever you tune in to find podcasts. You can also find us on traditional radio stations across the US every Monday and Thursday on a variety of stations all the way from Las Vegas to Florida and even Colorado Springs. If you want to go join us at Colorado Springs, go to 87.9 FM on Colorado Springs, Colorado. You can also find us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. If you're a regular listener, big viewer, thank you for making us the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 listeners globally. With a potential reach of 2.5 to 3 million listeners every single show, we're honored and grateful to Inc.com for being cited as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. Also, now, you can also find us by going to Google Home or Alexa. Just simply say, play Dov Baron Podcast, and it will. That's exciting. All right, so thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please go to iTunes, iHeart, and Spotify, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's dive right in. Let's strip it down. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, entrepreneur, leader in any capacity, you know that at every level of your organization, you have got to have teams who can not only come together, but create extraordinary results. But how are you going to build teams that will, even in the most extreme circumstances, outperform the competition? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Our guest on this episode is Caspar Craven. Caspar Craven is a leader in his own right. He has launched multiple successful ventures, sold one of them for 7 figures while sailing in the Pacific Ocean. Moreover, his perspective on leadership and how to work better as a team is not only unique, but deeply relevant to each of us. His experience covers not only working with large and small organizations, but working in the most extreme environments. Caspar Craven is the author of a brand new book entitled Where the Magic Happens. He has twice sailed around the room, possibly. He's twice sailed around the world, that's for sure, most recently with his wife and 3 young children. So therefore he knows a little bit about team building. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Caspar Craven! Welcome, sir!
Thank you very much, Dov, and it's great to be here. Thank you for that very kind build-up. And,
well, you're very welcome, man. It's great to have you on. Now, you're a business guy, and I want to get into that, but I want to start with the book, even in the title, Where the Magic Happens. Tell us about why you chose that title. Give us some background.
Okay, so firstly, it's interesting. Apparently there are 2 meanings to where the magic happens. Someone said to me the other day, "Is that what happens with your wife?" And I said, "No, that's something else."
That's your marriage book about improving sex life. But that's another subject. That's part 2.
That's a different story entirely. Where the magic happens is where that classic picture where you step outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
You know the graph you see.
Yep.
Here's your comfort zone, and this is where the magic happens. And I think all of us have things that we can do where we can stretch ourselves, where we step into more uncertainty. And it's when you step into that uncertainty and you embrace change, that's where I think the magic happens. So that's the essence of what the book is all about. And it takes us through our journey, both in terms of building and creating the businesses to make our adventure happen, and then the voyage around the world with my wife and 3 kids. So.
We're going to come back to the business side, but let's go to the sailing around the world for a minute. You sailed around the world with your wife and 3 children who were at the time aged 9, 7, and 2.
Correct.
Right. So I just want to challenge anybody to spend a couple of weeks without any assistance whatsoever with 3 kids aged 7, 9, and 2 doing nothing. Just trying to get them to go to bed on time, trying to get them to do their homework, let alone turn them into your sailing crew. Let's talk about it at that level first. First of all, how the hell did you talk your missus into this? Because she must have been like, yeah, I might throw the kids overboard, or even particularly you.
So how did I talk my wife into it? Well, I'd sailed around the world before, back in 2000, and I love being on the ocean and yacht racing.
Was that solo?
No, so that was on that was on a crude race. It was described as the world's toughest yacht race. The BT Global Challenge was the formal name for it, and there were 12 boats, 18 crew on each boat, wow. And we took 10 months racing around the world. So we sailed across the Atlantic to Boston, all the way down the Americas, around Cape Horn, across the two southern oceans, down into Iceberg Zone, and so on. So that was pretty gnarly, big waves, and it's interesting to talk about, because obviously the context of this is leadership, and when you're sailing out there with 18 people for 40 days at a time, the skills that you need are not how to pull on a rope and how to deal with sales. They're 100% all about how do you deal with people, how do you deal with emotions, how do you get the best out of people. So that was my first sailing experience. I was 28 at the time when I did that. And I ended up running one half of the boat as a watch leader, and so I was the youngest person on the crew. So I had to grow up pretty quick and learn how to deal with.
But
with
coming
people.
back, see, so here's what I'm picturing. Right? Were you married at the time?
So I have a story about that as well, actually.
Go ahead.
So I was with I had a girlfriend at the time, and the whole thing to come and sail around the world, we were at the London Boat Show, and I had no intention of signing up to sail around the world, and I was there. It was January 2000, just after the whole sort of millennium stuff and Y2K,
right.
If any of our listeners remember that. And I got chatting to the guys on this stand. There's huge, great big plasma screens with boats crashing through waves, and I was just like captivated. And the guy comes up to me and says, well, do you want to sign up to sail around the world in 2004? And I was like, I can't plan my life 4 years in advance. So he said, well, would you like to sign up for the one in sort of 9 months' time? And it's like, whoa, tell me about that. So he told me all about it. And before I knew what I was doing, my hand was flowing across the piece of paper to sign up for it. Wow. My girlfriend comes over to me and says, what are you doing? To which I say, I'm signing up to sail around the world, but don't worry, it'll probably never happen. A week later, I had a phone interview with Sache Blythe, and I was on the race.
Wow.
So my girlfriend eventually became my wife, who sailed around the world with me the second time. So.
But here's my point. You sail around the world the first time.
Yep.
You said it was supposedly the toughest sailing race in the world. You come back, I'm just guessing, that you've got a couple of stories when you come back. And a couple of those stories are probably going to be a bit gnarly, and some of them are going to be a bit scary. And then you say, let's go do it, honey, with the kids. Does she at that point go and slap you upside the head to try and wake you up?
Well, here's the thing, right? You're probably not going to believe this, but it was actually my wife's idea to do it.
Really?
And to add some more detail to that, she had been sailing on a boat twice at that point, and she'd been seasick both times.
Oh, lovely.
She was the one who said, "Why don't we sail around the world?" And I'm like, "Really?" And and it's, just to be candid, I mean, back then, this was 2009, June 2009. I had a small business back then. We were turning over about $500,000. We were losing money. And the idea of buying a boat and sailing around the world was completely ridiculous. So everyone laughed when we told them. And not only that, because when you have a small business and you're working all the hours, then it's not particularly healthy for relationships. So my wife and I were definitely not seeing eye to eye. Things were pretty uncomfortable and crunchy. So when we made that decision to go and sail around the world, it was a life-changing decision because so many things then came out of it. So business-wise, relationship-wise, and so on. But it was actually my wife's idea back in the day to go and do it, not mine. So
this, you brought up something very interesting here, Caspar, that I want to address because of the kind of audience that we have. Because you talked about that, you were building the business, you're working in the business, you're probably working too many hours, like most entrepreneurs.
100%.
That has pressure on the relationship. Then, that very often breaks marriages.
Yep.
Was it your wife's idea that this would be a unifying process, at least romantically, in her head?
So I don't think that was the conscious thought. Here's where we were. So, we were in our late 30s. We had 2 kids. They were aged 4 and 2. And we were kind of asking ourselves the question, is this all there is?
Right.
What else is there to life? And we wanted something exciting to look forward to. And, you remember when you're in your early 20s and you come out of college and you're full of energy and optimism, and it's like that you can't fail. You can do anything.
Mm-hmm. And
we were there in our late 30s, and the business wasn't great, and barely saw my wife and my kids. And it was that thing. It's like, come on, let's create something that's just truly incredible and amazing. And when we had that first seed of the idea, we then spent 6 months talking about our vision for the future. And we'd wait until the kids had gone to bed, and we would get out these sheets of paper and felt tip pens, and we would talk about places we wanted to go in the world and things we wanted to go and see and how we wanted life to be different. And that just got us back on the same page, talking and getting excited about a vision in the future. And that was such a fundamental thing. And it's interesting, because we didn't want the same things initially. And the visualization I have of this is that here was all the things that I wanted to do. Here's all the things that Nicola wanted to do. And we just talked about it. We only found we had a few tiny things that were in common. So we dropped everything else and we just created a narrative, a story around these things that we shared in common. And those things were, we wanted to go diving on the Great Barrier Reef. We wanted to go to Carnival in Brazil. We wanted to go see elephants in Africa. So actually, the sailing wasn't a big part of it. And so we were talking about these things to go and do together. And my wife said, well, why don't we go and get the boat and go and sail around the world? It's like, hey, now we're talking. So it evolved from there. So finding that common ground and, just creating that excitement. So we disrupted our own lives by thinking about, what else could we do?
But I think you brought up some very interesting points here that are very relevant for leaders. And that is, number one, there must be more than this. We live in the first world. We think it's all about money, prestige, status, etc. And we work our asses off to get it. And then very often leaders are like, okay, is this it? So I would guess that from the outside, looking in at Caspar and your business and your family, it looked pretty sweet, and that they, whoever they are, would go, oh, I'd swap with him any day. Right. And I think that that's an important wake up call for all leaders who are going through some anxiety about where they think they should be, is that very often when we get to that quote peak, we go, what the hell am I doing here? And this is what you're saying. I mean, it's the title of your book, right? It's where the magic happens is, what if we jump off this safe place or this apparently safe place into something that feels dramatically uncomfortable? Now, what I found interesting about that was, if we put it in the context of being an executive or being a founder of an organization, that you have got to create a vision. So you've got to create a vision, and then you've got to you've really got to elicit everybody else into this vision. You've got to, have them come together in it. And what if you think about what you talked about with Nicola, in that there was a drifting, and then there was a deciding to, well, what do we want it to look like? Sort of, if you will, a masterminding of the vision, and then finding the common ground and the common values in that, and then a common jumping off place. I mean, this is a beautiful metaphor for what we need to do as leaders, even when it looks good. Because I think a lot of people do that when it looks bad, or they're like in their last moments. But you do when it looked good to the world and said, you know what, there's something better.
You absolutely nailed it there. I call it's a life at sort of 55 degrees temperature. It's not so cold that it's freezing, but it's not so hot it's like woohoo, and it's okay, but it's not freaking amazing. This is just like we're on fire doing cool stuff here. And that was the thing. It's like, is this all there is? And the interesting thing that we did is that we put our family first, and we created the family vision of what we wanted to do. My wife and I bought into it, and then the kids bought into it. And a lot of people said to me, it was like, well, isn't that very selfish, because that's all about you and your family? But by doing that then forced me in my business to do the best work I'd ever done of my life. I became the best leader I'd ever become. Why? Because I was driven by making a personal vision happen. That gave me the fire, the juice to go deeper than I'd ever gone before, to learn more than I'd ever gone before. Because we'll come on to it a little bit, perhaps. But I was pushing my business so hard to make the money work that I got to one point where everybody threatened to leave. And it was like, I then had a major wake-up call. I then had to go and do something different in the business and build my leadership skills up again. And I wouldn't have got to that point if I hadn't had that burning personal vision that I've got to go and make this happen.
So let's do that. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about that point that was a turning point for you in your business, in your leadership, in whatever it was, when everybody was about to leave. Walk us through that. And because one of the things I've noticed is that people like to think that we change in the instant. We don't change in the instant. I fell off a mountain, and people say to me all the time, it must have changed you. No, it didn't. It made me more arrogant. It made me more stubborn. It made me all those things. It was later, when other things happened, that I went, oh shit, I'm on the same path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where, I'm on the path to another fall. This is not good, that I had to change.
Yes.
My guess is there were warning signs before they said we're done. So walk us through how you got to shift. Not only what happened, but what you got to shift.
Yep. So it started back in 2009. We created this vision statement, and we said on the 1st of August 2014, we're setting sail as a happy, contented family, having achieved a certain amount of money. And that date was burnt in the diary. It was on a picture on the kitchen wall. And, we were going to make that thing happen come hell or high water. There was literally no movement on that date. So we get to 2011. We're now 2 years into the plan. And I was changing things in the business. The reality was that I was doing small tinkering. And it was not changing the numbers. So we'd grown a little bit, but by nowhere near enough. And it's a big difference between growing and creating a profitable business and then realizing money from it and selling it. Huge difference, as you'll know. So late 2011, I was starting to ask myself the question, what have I got to do now? And I realized that I had to take a dramatically different approach. So I immersed myself in learning. And I remember I came across this online, this training course. It was called Renegade Millionaire, run by a guy from the States, Dan Kennedy. And it was £5,000 sterling for a 3-day course. And I remember looking at it and thinking, why would anyone spend £5,000 on a 3-day course? But there was something about the content that was really, really compelling and interesting. I dismissed it out of my mind. As like, there was no way I could spend that much money on my training. And about a month later, I had a meeting with a client of mine. He was a finance director, and he was like, he never spends a pound without getting a return on it. And we did the business we're doing, and then he was chatting afterwards, and he was telling me about this amazing course he went on. And I said, what was it called? And he said, it was this Renegade Millionaire course. And I was like, you paid $5,000 to go on that? And he said it was the best thing I've ever did. It was unbelievable value. So, they had the whole tracking internet stuff where the adverts follow you around. About a week after that, I started seeing adverts selling the DVDs and the workbook for £1,000. And I sat there for an hour with my finger hovering over the buy button thinking, am I really about to spend £1,000 on 12 DVDs and a workbook? Of course, I pressed the button, right, and I bought it. It arrived a few days before Christmas. And then between Christmas and New Year, I had light bulb moments going off inside my head. And, I trained as a chartered accountant. I was a director in an investment bank, and I thought I knew about business and how to make money, but I realized I knew next to nothing. Mm-hmm. So I went back to the business at the start of 2012. And I was just like a man possessed. And I created 200 videos. I hired new staff. I created new products. And I was taking loads of techniques from America and bringing them to England. And at the end of the first quarter, my business partner took me to one side and he said, Caspar, you're being a nightmare. He said, if you carry on doing what you're doing, everybody is going to leave, including me. And I was so driven by the idea of doing these different things, but I realized I was trying to do it all on my own. It was all about me, my ego. And my business partner, Ed, said, look, you've got to go and get some coaching. So that was the point I started working with a leadership coach, and we stripped down everything that I did. And she basically she said some words to me, which stuck with me ever since, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I realized that I had to build the team. Right. So we to develop the skills and the techniques. And that was how we turned the business around. So it was that breaking point in the business that forced me to go and do the learning necessary. So that was my journey.
So those, again, shifting from being this lone wolf in a business to being somebody who gets, I got to build a team. Talk to us about what about that transferred over into being able to sail around the world with your wife and 3 small children, young children, because I think the idea of sailing around the world is a very nice romantic idea for people looking in. You're in these beautiful turquoise oceans, there's a warm breeze, it's very nice, there's some cool 90s, 80s music playing in the background, and then you pull into this fabulous exotic harbor or, this beautiful island, and you're sunbathing and sipping on champagne and meeting other multi-millionaires in the process. It's all very romantic and it's all a nice movie. But you and I both know, I know not from personal experience, but I am wise enough to know it isn't really like that. So talk to us about using those leadership skills with you. I mean, you got to discuss things or maybe even shout orders at somebody who is your wife and maybe who is a 5-year-old who's a member of your team.
Yeah. There's a lot in there, and you by the way, your perception there is bang on the money. A lot of people think you're sort of sitting there sipping a gin and tonic, and someone else is doing the work. It's I want to disabuse anybody of the idea that it's easy. Sailing around the world is actually quite hard work, as someone once said, it's doing boat maintenance in exotic places. So because a lot of things break and you have to fix it. And I do have a video on my website as well of of what some of the seas are like with the boats crashing through waves and things like that. But it's hard work, and you've got you're outnumbered because we had 3 kids, so one more than the 2 of us, and so you're having to do homeschooling and fix the boat and all the things you need to do to make a boat run. So so the question, how do we prepare for that? So one of the things that I realized when I was transforming my business, we did a huge amount of work about values. And back in my corporate days, I used to think that values was just a whole bunch of BS. Mm-hmm. And people would talk about it. I'd roll my eyes and let's wait until this is over and we'll carry on with the important stuff. But I came to realize they're the fundamental building block. And that was working on values and building up people's strengths and focusing on what's right rather than what's wrong was the fundamental thing of how we turned the business around the corner, and we made that profitable and successful. And that was the same thing that we used on the boat. So building a values-based framework and then finding the things that ignited each of the family. So what did they all enjoy doing and building on their strengths? Because most people tell you what they're doing wrong. And, you start a sentence by saying the problem is, and just focusing on the things, because that's what our brains are hardwired to do.
Of course they
but building our team, there was no way we could do that. So it was building up the team and building up the strengths in the team, and creating the emotional resilience for myself, my wife, and the kids. So that was very much at the core of it.
So how did you address that? I mean, for instance, I mean, I'm trying to have our viewers, our listeners, get a picture of this, because as I said, it's not all smooth sailing, quite literally, not just figuratively speaking. So when you're on a boat, there's 5 of you, 3 of whom are children. You've got to work as a team. How did you bond that team together? What was it you did that you were able to make everybody work as a team, that you had learned from business, that you could take back into business, and that you are sharing today in your book and on the platform as you speak?
So the first thing is people only do things for their own reasons, not for your reasons.
Right.
And so a lot of the upfront work was igniting the imagination of the whole team in terms of what we were doing. Because if we just turn around to the kids and say, right, kids, tomorrow we're off sailing around the world, we would have had a whole bunch of problems. So we engaged them really early on by getting them excited about the future and the things that they wanted to do. So, the vision for my wife and I, our reason why, our mission, if you like, was to create magical, life-changing experiences for us and our children. But that was for us. But for the kids, it would be different things. So we spent a lot of time getting out magazines and pictures and describing things to the kids and talking about what they wanted to do. So my daughter Bluebell, she wanted to make friends. She wanted to go swimming. She wanted to go swimming with dolphins. My son Columbus, he wants to go fishing. He wants to go exploring around the world. So it was all about creating those anchors. And I think it's the way I relate that back to business. For me, it's all about having purpose-driven organizations. Mm-hmm. What's the reason why we are doing this? Because if you can tap into people's whys, then that just releases the most unbelievable amount of energy to get you going in a particular direction. So, the whole vision piece, where are we going? And then why is it important? And our whys were different, but it didn't matter because they were strong whys and we were going in the same direction. So that was the first building block. Mm-hmm. Then after that, it was building up our experiences together as a team. So over that 5-year period, we'd take the kids out on boats and we would get them used to it and just building up their familiarity. Because if we knew that they had a scary experience anywhere in that build-up period, it would have killed it like that.
Right.
And so it was being very careful to choreograph the experiences and take care of the team. And one of the things that I think is most powerful for a leader, probably the single most important thing, is to care about your team, that compassion piece. And that was what I had to do with my kids. I had to care about them and what they were doing. Same thing I had to do in the businesses, to care about the individual people. And
but just let me pause you for a moment, because our listeners, our viewers might go, well, of course you care about your kids, right? Of course, mm-hmm. It's natural.
Yep.
However, a lot of leaders feel like compassion, empathy is mollycoddling your own team, as opposed to, we got to get shit done.
Yep.
So I want you, because I agree with you fully, but I want you to share with our listeners, our viewers, why that is so important and why it's not mollycoddling.
Yeah. So for me, it's, every person is individual. They're unique. They have different reasons why they do things, and they have different strengths. And in the business, when I was building that up, what I had to do was to get each and every person firing. And if they weren't right for the business, then they had to go. And we got rid of people for sure. But I always believe in sort of recruiting people and bringing people into the team because they've got the right attitude, skills and specific things. We can teach all that stuff. Sure. And what we would do is we'd bring people into the business, and our values, every week we would hold values prizes, and we would tell people what they were doing well, and we were building them up. And we gave people targets of the areas that they had to reach, and then we celebrated those targets when we got them. If they didn't hit them, then of course there is the other side as well. It's not just soft nicey. There has to be a hard edge at some point. But the fundamental thing was caring about people and building on their strengths. So when we were changing the business, some people had to go, and but we were left with a core of people who were building from the right place. So.
But you brought up another point here that again is a great transfer over in the context of business. You talked about that it was your wife's idea to sail around the world. She'd sailed twice and been seasick twice. If we put that in the context of business, we have, okay, so Charlie came up with this idea. Charlie's crap at the idea, but he really thinks we should do it. Right? So I'm thinking about being in a business, having my team, and maybe a team member comes up with a great idea, but that team member's not particularly good at it, but I certainly want to include them. How would you guide that organization around that? Because the tendency is to, exactly what you just said, focus on people's strengths, and this is not Charlie's strength. So in that case, you know what, honey, this is a great idea. We should sail around the world, but you should look after the kids, and I'm going to get somebody else to come on board with us who's going to help me to sail, who actually knows what the freak they're doing.
So one of the mantras that we developed in the business was this saying all about no ego. It doesn't matter who is right. It only matters what is right. And we work really hard to take that ego piece out of it. And it's hard. It's ingrained into all of us.
Of course it is.
Especially in a work environment. But that was the attitude that we were taking. And we were celebrating the improvements and the effort that different people were putting in. So if someone came up with the idea, it's like, well, who's got the best skills to do this? And my wife and I are a great example of this, because we always say that if it was down to me, nothing would ever get finished. If it was down to my wife, nothing would ever get started. And we recognize the different skills that we have, that I create the energy and the ideas, and then she's really, really good at doing the detail. So there's a huge piece there about self-awareness and saying, what's the zone that you're operating in? And there's such a simple way to find those things out. What are the things at the end of the day or at the end of the week that are still on your to-do list? Because there'll be the same things there every single day or every single week. Those are the things you don't enjoy doing, and it'll be different for somebody else. So it's just sort of understanding what's the zone that you're operating in and just building the team, doing the right things around you.
So, it's pretty clear for me, but I want to have you say it in your own words, so that for our listeners, or for our viewers, which is, what do you see as the major distinction between managing and leading, between being in management, being in leadership?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so I grew up in the working place. So I came into the workplace in 1993, and I worked in two large accountancy firms for close on 10 years. And then it was all about management, carrot stick approach. If you don't do this, you get beaten, and you're measured continuously. And that, when I almost broke my business, that was what I had to throw out of the door, and I had to learn how to be a leader, because I believe that management is the failure of leadership. If you can't lead, you end up managing. And
so just stop, because I want everybody to get that quote you just said about management. I want to stop that, because I want real people to really pause and write that down, because I think it's something that we might hear but not really process.
So So yes, I truly think that management is the failure of leadership. If you can't lead, you end up managing. But actually, the goal for all of us should be all about creating leaders. And that's all about getting the vision. Where are we going? Why is it important? Caring about the people around you and building on their strengths. And leadership, for me, it's not a title. It's the way that you show up. And the biggest leader in my family is my 5-year-old Willow. I always call her my leader on the pitch. So what do I mean by that? So whenever I want to get anything done in my family world, she's the person I turn to first, and I get her excited about an idea, and she's off. She's like, yeah, let's go and do it. And then her energy and enthusiasm infects my wife and then my other 2 children. And she.
So every now and then your wife turns around to you and says, "You bastard! You spoke to Willow, didn't you?"
Yeah.
That's how you're manipulating me. You spoke to Willow, and now she's so excited I can't say no.
You might have just read one of our conversations there, but yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
But it's just that state of mind where you have, it's like, right, yeah, let's go and do this. What have we got to do? And, so I have a story from last week that my wife was driving home from school with the kids, and Willow's in the car, and there was an argument going on between the other 2. And Willow turns around and says, "Can everyone tell me what they're proud of today?" And literally, she just changed the conversation with one question. I mean, it's it. Leadership is it's how you show up. It's how you act, and you don't wait to be given it. It's just how you conduct yourself every single day.
Yeah, in our work in my company, what we've said is a part of our commitment, our dedication, is redefining leadership, and part of that redefining leadership is the impact you have. So, and that is, so it's not just about having impact, but what kind of impact. So, which is, what you're talking about, how you show up. Because Willow could have changed the subject by screaming and shouting and being a loony, because kids can do that, right? They can scream and shout and be crazy. But she said, can you tell us what you're proud of today? Which was pretty awesome. But it was about choosing the impact. It was very cool. I think we could all learn a couple of things from Willow.
She still has access to all the other the mechanisms as well, so she knows how to scream.
Oh, I'm sure. But
she's a normal 5-year-old child.
But maybe that's your next book, Leadership Lessons from Willow.
maybe. You heard it here first.
Exactly. So listen, folks. Just let you know, this is an exclusive. You heard Caspar's next book right here before the first one's even out on the shelves. This is where it is. Leadership Lessons from Willow, without throwing a screaming abdab. So that's very cool. So obviously in the sailing experience, you learned how to lead in volatile situations, in situations where everybody's temper's a little bit thin, where everybody's patience is a little bit thin, where probably people are exhausted and hungry, and and you're fighting against, quite literally, the elements. Talk to us about leading in those situations, because some of our viewers, our listeners, will remember 2008, 2009, the Great Recession. Everything's going fantastic, and then suddenly you sail off the end of the world, is the sense of business. And of course, many businesses went down the toilet in the process of that. But there were others who not only came back, but came back stronger. Yeah. And I think that, that's an example of leading in a volatile situation of change, right? So where things are changing so dramatically. Talk to us about what you've learned and what you would share around those situations, because I'm sure some listeners are going through that right now.
Okay, so there's a lot there. I think one of the highest skill sets that anyone needs these days is being able to make decisions in the face of uncertainty. All of our businesses face disruption. And I know one of my mentors always says, if you plan on being in the business that you're in now, in 5 years' time, you won't be in a business. Right. So change is upon us in every single way, politically, economically, culturally, big data. I mean, you could just go on for hours about all the different changes. So it's the highest skill set that we need. So how do you prepare for change? How do you deal with that? I think that you have to focus on what are the big things. It's so easy to get lost in the weeds and all the small details. So I'll give you an analogy. When we were getting ready to leave the UK, we only bought the boat 10 weeks before we left. So we had a lot of work to do in a short space of time, and I also had pretty major back surgery in that time as well. So it wasn't ideal. But, we had made this decision that we were going to go and do this. We could have said, we need to get this fixed, we need to get this fixed, we need to get this fixed, and we could have waited another year and gone later. But we asked ourselves these questions. Have we got a good boat that is safe and will deal with whatever oceans we've got? Yes. Do we trust ourselves that whatever comes up, we will figure out the answer to it? Yes. Good enough, then we're going to get going. And it's focusing on those one or two things that are super, super important. And a lot of it is backing yourself and trusting yourself that although you don't know what's coming up, you have to get resourceful and how you figure it out. And how we got the money together to go sailing was really good preparation, because we had to get super resourceful. Because I think resourcefulness is like a muscle, and you have to train that muscle. And so we built that muscle first in terms of the business world, and then we used it on the boat. So we had certain scary situations. So we had one instance where we had power failure in the middle of the deep in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and you're there in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, okay, you're in this huge storm, and you've got no power, you've got no pumps, you've got, you're in a pretty shitty situation. What do? Well, you deal with it. You say, okay, what are the important things we've got to try and do, and you take it a step at a time. And for me, I always feel in a situation like that, the world just slows down, and you say, okay, what are the important things? First, check everybody around me is okay, make sure they're cool, and then we're just going to get the best minds on the problem, and we're going to figure it out one step at a time. And, there's a formula which you're probably aware of, the E plus R equals O formula, where, E is the event that something happens to you, R is your reaction, and O is the outcome. And the reaction is always 100% under your control. The event does not equal the outcome. And so by managing your emotions, by managing yourself, that's how you get in control of a situation. And, you deal with whatever comes up. And, a boat is a great metaphor for a business.
Absolutely.
I remember, back in my business sort of saying, wouldn't it be great if we had more money, if we had more good people, if we had more clients, if. It's like, we've got what we got, right? Deal with it. And the boat's exactly the same. When we're out there in the middle of the ocean, it's like, well, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have power failure? Well, what, we've got it. So we'll just, figure it out a step at a time.
Let's sort of go back a little bit, because the argument can be, you got to face reality. And I think that is often a trap. I think it's a trap to go the other way too far, but I think it's a trap to say, you got to face reality. Because if I'm having a conversation, or not I, but if someone's having a conversation with you at that time, they go, listen, Caspar, what are you doing? This is crazy, mate. You've only got 10 weeks to get the boat ready, and you've just had back surgery. Now, this was not a minor surgery, right? This was a major surgery, and you're going to be lead man on the boat. So you're going to be, quote, the captain. You're going to be the CEO of this event, this adventure, and you're also going to be the biggest muscle on the boat, and you've had back surgery. The facts are, it's not a good time. You should probably wait and do it next year.
Yep.
Talk to us about that, because in a business world, that might be, listen, you just lost 100 grand, or you just lost $1 million, or the stock went down by 40%, or, this part of the market has shifted dramatically. Talk to us about that, because that's an easy out and a reasonable out, as in it's not you being chicken.
So I'll tell you how we dealt with that, and I'll also relate it back to my business as well, and the situation we had, which is pretty similar to the one you just described. And it's also worth saying, by the way, that a lot of people, when they hear the story and they hear that section about the boat and my back and so on, 50% of people think that I'm the most amazing dad in the world, and 50% of people think I'm the most irresponsible person that they've ever met,
Of course,
and I'm utterly nuts. But, my wife trained as an attorney. I trained as a chartered accountant, and neither of us in the habit of being cavalier or reckless. And it's thinking about the situation. I know it doesn't sound like that, but truly we're not. So we looked at that situation, and we said, okay, so I can't pull any ropes for 6 weeks. And we looked at the passages we had to do, and we had to get the boats south of the Bay of Biscay, so below Spain, before the end of August. Because then the weather starts turning in the northern Atlantic. So we said, okay, we need to get going. I can't pull on ropes, so we asked for help. And we had 2 people came and joined us for the first 2 weeks on the boat. My younger brother, Max, and the guy, Ian, who's godparents to all 3 of my kids, who I'd sailed around the world with before. So we got some muscle on board who were experienced people. We left Willow, the 2-year-old, at home with Nicola's parents for that first section. So we had 4 adults and 2 kids, rather than myself and Nicola. And we did put the date back to the 20th of August rather than the 1st of August. So we had a little bit of flexibility in there. So we asked for help and we changed our plans. And all along we said we were going to do this all on our own. But, when we were faced with that situation, it's like, okay, we do need to make some adjustments here. We're not just going to press ahead and be reckless. We're going to change things and get, strengthen the team so that we can get through this. And then from Portugal onwards, it was just the 5 of us. My back had recovered by then, and, we were better sailing conditions and so on. So that was how we dealt with that. The parallel with business, I remember back in 2012, I think it was, that my business partner, he had about 90% of the sales pipeline, the big deal, sitting with him. And he had a sudden tragedy in his family. And he was taken out of business like that. Wow. And it was just like, okay, so suddenly we're facing this big hole. And we just had to get resourceful. And we looked at the assets that we had. We had a lot of prospects that we were talking to. And we created a series of campaigns. We put risk-free guarantees on them. And we got creative. We went out there, and within a week, we closed about 50 grand's worth of deals. And, because we had to get resourceful. We weren't going to do that beforehand. And it was only because you're put to that sword that you suddenly find things that you hadn't seen before, and you get creative.
But that's a very good point, isn't it? Because it's not only resourceful, but it's adaptable. So you've got to. I mean, one of my quotes is, "If you don't adapt, you die," and it's that simple. And those who adapt the fastest make the most. Yes. And so, this willingness to adapt. So, we're still sailing around the world, but we have to adapt. And what do we need? For the adaptation is that for the first part, we are going to let the little one stay home, and we're going to get a little bit of help to get going. But now I want to flip it and go as we move towards the end of the show, but I want to flip it because at that point, that could be like losing your 2 top players in the team. So you've got this executive team, they're fabulous people, and there's only 4 of you in the team, but 2 of them are with you, but they're only with you for a short time and then they're gone. So initially, you brought them on as a resource, but now that would be very easy to become a resource you feel very reliant upon. And then Portugal comes and they're like, "See ya, Captain, I'm off." So talk to us about that part, because that could also be a flip.
It was. I mean, to be honest, when the guys got off, I was in pretty healthy condition then. And, the picture was exactly as we had envisaged it. So actually, it was pretty easy to step into that. And, we headed back out to sea again. And we started to get into the roles and the things that we wanted to. So
what I'm interested in is your mindset about how did you stop your mind from going to the loss, the lack? of the two people, because, okay, your back's better, okay, you've trained, okay, you're ready, but nonetheless, God, it was good having them here. And this trip would be a lot easier.
The reason I didn't answer the question is my mind doesn't think that way. I can't see that. And it frustrates my wife immensely that she says, like, do you remember this argument or this stuff we had last week? And it's like, nope, it's gone. And I find it really hard because I've trained myself deliberately, consciously, to focus on what's right and to build things up rather than see what's missing and what have I lost. It's like, what have I got? And that's something that I get. I mean, it's like every day I focus on what I'm grateful for and what I have rather than what I haven't got. So it's a hard question for me to answer.
But that's it. You did answer it. That's the whole point, is you focus on what you have, not on what you no longer have, but what you actually have. Because we're coming towards the end of the show, and if you could really have the leaders watching, listening to us, get something totally practical out of this that would have them go, okay, and something not only practical, but something they could put into action in the next 24 to 48 hours, and at the longest in the next 5 working days, what would it be that you'd say, go do this?
Okay. I would plant seeds of kindness, okay? Now, that might sound soft, but in your team, I would say, whether it's your family team or your business team, notice small details and tell people things they're doing well. I used to give out chocolate bars in my business. I used to give my kids stickers because small victories lead to big victories. And you build up these things and you build the people in your team around you to be heroes. And you find small details that most people will miss and you tell people specifically what they're doing well and you give them something tangible. I used to write handwritten notes to people when they'd done stuff well and I would give them to them because people carry that stuff around. So it's about building people up. That would be the first thing that I would do for anyone.
I think you're so right. This is so often what we miss in business, in that we get very focused on the big stuff and those big, deadlines and bottom lines, and instead of really paying attention to how well somebody did in a given moment. If you waited to praise your wife when she finally was able to do the sailing well, as opposed to every step of the way that she got better, I mean, she probably would have jumped ship and said, I'll go home on the back of a dolphin.
Absolutely. And the analogy I have with my kids, if I say to my kids, do this thing today, and I expect them to do it tomorrow, the only person I'm deluding is myself.
Right.
And I have to consistently build them and encourage them. And eventually, those seeds are going to grow into big oak trees. But, it's sunshine and water every single day consistently. And that's how you build a winning team in my book.
Well, you and I have a very similar philosophy that we need to teach leadership to kids. But in order to do that, we have to be leaders as adults. Can you give us a little more tweak on that?
Yeah, from your point of view? And I think for so many people, if they're, sort of my age, where you've been trained in management rather than leadership, it's something you have to unlearn. Yes. But kids are brilliantly receptive to this. And if you make it fun and make it engaging, like my 5-year-old saying, what are we all proud of today? And, the effect of getting everyone engaged at whatever level. And that's how it relates back to that no ego thing, right? It doesn't really matter who is right. It only matters what's right. If Willow comes up with the right answer of how we fix a broken engine, it's like, whoo, that's brilliant, right? I don't care where it comes from because we're all working together. So.
That's fabulous, mate. Well, listen, this has been just a pleasure and an honor, and really want to thank you for being with us. Please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you, your book, and all the other resources that you have to offer.
Okay, thank you very much. So my website is CasparCraven.com, CASPAR, Craven, CRAVEN.com. And if you go into Amazon and search for my name, Caspar Craven, or the book title, Where the Magic Happens, it's there, and I hope you enjoy it because it takes you through the whole journey of not just the sailing, but for me the fundamentally important part, and starting with that question: is this all there is?
Yeah.
And I put in there our formula, our blueprint for how we changed everything. So I hope that for any of your listeners who are asking that question, the answers are all in the book.
Fabulous. Well, we will definitely make sure to share that resource. We'll make sure that we post that URL so people can go and find all that. It was great having you here, my friend. I really appreciate it. Some great insights, some great value. And I would say to our listeners, as I always do, don't just listen to this. It's a waste of time. Go do something with it. Don't waste your time. Go do something with it. Put it in action. This is some very valuable material here. And listen, if you can build a team out of 3 kids and somebody who's seasick to sail around the world, man, you can build any team. That's pretty awesome. So thank you again, Caspar. It's been a pleasure having you here with us. Hope you'll stay with us to the end. And remember, dear listener, the research consistently shows that some of the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, but only to have them leaving them at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in the training and development of your talent, only have them leave you before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. And also remember to take yourself over to the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need a triple W, just matrix like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool. Assess yourself in the 5 areas of leadership. The value at $197 is absolutely free to you. Matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach the next level of clarity, focus, purpose, profit in your business, in your life, and your leadership impact. Till next time, this is Dov Baron saying, stay curious, my friend, stay curious about how to build a team based on kindness, compassion, and empathy. Get curious about that. Till next time, I'm out.